Hi, welcome to this episode of the Smart Leaders Sell podcast. I'm Jessica Lorimer, sales coach and leadership expert, and today I'm joined by one of my favorite people on the internet, like genuinely one of my favorite people, the amazing Sarah Banks. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. So Sarah is somebody who is part of my Dottie community, who's been part of the Smart Leaders Sell community for, I want to say, about 6 or 7 months. Yeah, about 6 or 7 months. And Sarah is different from a lot of the people I think that normally come into my community. I get lots of internet marketers, people who are building businesses based around online business coaches, marketing coaches, lead generation specialists. I get lots of those people who come into my community. What I don't always see that often is people like Sarah who are genuinely trying to change bigger. I say bigger things like business coaching doesn't matter, but who are trying to change things outside of people's financials. It's very, very easy when we come into the online world to assume that money is the only thing that matters. But what Sarah does is she works to change the world of infertility. And so there are a lot of people out there who I know who've obviously been through infertility, who've kind of gone through the IVF process, who've been able to have children or not have children. And I had never realized what impact that really had until I met you, and until you came into my community, you joined the cash creation course to ultimately make infertility something that we actually talk about, to make people aware of it, and to help people have a better experience when they are suffering with some of those symptoms.
Yeah, definitely. I went through my own infertility journey after I finally got my family after 6 years of trying and 2 rounds of IVF. And I used to be a senior buyer before I had my children. And for me, I wanted to make a change, to do something that would help people that had been in the same position I was. You hear a lot about the IVF postcode lottery, but you don't hear very much about the emotional side of it and the support that people need and what people actually go through when they're struggling to conceive and going through IVF. It's a really dark time for people and they need a lot of support. And I felt that wasn't available when I was going through it myself and through treatment. So what I want to do, I retrained to be a coach, and I'm specialising in fertility coaching, so that I work with people who are struggling to conceive, who are going through IVF. And I work with them to break through the overwhelming feelings of everything that's going on. They have no control over their life. They're stuck in a rut. They're anxious. Their life plan of having a family is under question, really. So it's working through with them how they can make changes to improve their life and cope better with going through the IVF process as well. So I work with them on a one-to-one basis. I also work with organisations to help them support the people that they're working with or treating, because again, that level of support isn't always there. They don't always have the time to do it. And there's a big need for more emotional support to help people get through this tough part of their life.
And I think we forget, sometimes, and I see this message in the online business space a lot, is hustle, hustle, hustle. And so everyone comes in and they're like, right, I'm going to work away and I'm going to run the business. And I've often looked at women and men, in the online business space who have children and thought, God, they're superheroes. And, the fact that you guys have children and that you're able to still do everything and put everything into, much more limited time than somebody like me who doesn't have kids. What I'd never really thought about were the people who were suffering with something like infertility and trying to live their normal everyday life, and quite how debilitating that must be.
Yeah, and it impacts on everything, and even small day-to-day things can set people off on a spiral of feeling depressed, feeling sad, reminding them of the things they don't have. It's difficult at work, managing treatment around it. I worked in an office full of women, and people who are in that situation often find they're surrounded by people pregnant all the time, which is another constant reminder, and it's very difficult. You find that a lot of people put their life on hold because they feel they can't change jobs, they can't go on holidays, they can't buy nice things in case they get pregnant, but that just cycle continues again and again, which leaves you feeling left behind. So everybody else seems to be having a wonderful life while you're still stuck where you are. And that then brings on more anxiety and upset. So it's about kind of managing that anxiety and upset to be in a better state for going through treatment, but also ensuring that the life you've got, you're happy with. You're taking control and having a life that you're happy with outside of the fertility issues as well, which is a bit overwhelming when you're going through treatment. The thought of changing jobs or things like that can be really overwhelming for people.
It's huge, isn't it? It really is huge. And you're doing phenomenally well in this space. You know, I think I remember you joining Cash Creation, and when you originally came to sign up, you had a call with me and you said, I just want to help people. And I see this so often. Everyone, you know, people come to me all the time, and especially people who are in healing roles or spiritual roles, or like yourself who are in like health and wellness, will always say, I really want to help people. And so I don't necessarily want to charge them. And I remember having that call with you, and you were saying, yes, I really want to help people and I really want to do all this stuff, but I'm at a point in my life where actually I recognize that I deserve to get paid. And it was this huge shift really for you, and watching you go through Cash Creation and start to take on more clients and work with more different organizations and things was a really, really huge turning point for your business and for you, in that you became more able to help more people. You know, it wasn't a case of I'm charging them and I feel bad. It was a case of actually, when I charge people, I can afford to spend more time working with the wider message.
Definitely. And one of the things I wanted to do aside from my business was run a support group as well, so that people can get free support as well. So by working with people and charging people for coaching or working with organisations, it allows me to then offer the free support as well for those that need it, and the peer support that people want online, and then face-to-face meetings as well. But yeah, it's been a big barrier for me to overcome. That's something that I'm still working on, in terms of feeling comfortable selling to people who are in a vulnerable state. And I've had to work on my mindset around this, and I'm getting there with it, in that actually by charging and offering coaching services, I'm actually helping them take action because they're more accountable and they're listening to me. They're making changes themselves because they're paying me for it. And I know the difference it makes, but it's something that I still struggle with in terms of selling to them.
And this is kind of part of your question today, isn't it? So what is it that what's your big question from today?
It's basically how to sell in a sensitive market without looking like you're taking advantage of vulnerable people. So I know a lot of your amazing sales techniques are brilliant, and there's a lot of them that work, but there's some that aren't always fitting for when you're working with vulnerable people and selling to them. So it's how to get around that really, and still be able to sell to them without it looking like you're taking advantage.
And so I think the thing that we have to look at is, firstly, do you feel like you are taking advantage of people by selling to them?
No.
Okay, then that's fine. Like if anyone ever checks in with themselves and says yes, then you have either a mindset issue or there's an integrity issue there. So the fact that you don't means that actually it's not necessarily a mindset issue itself. It's more about how can we tailor the strategies that you're using to the market that you're in. So what is it that makes you uncomfortable about selling? So when we talk about taking advantage of people, what's the real bit that makes you feel uncomfortable?
There is some mindset issue around the kind of taking money, but I know I paid to see a coach when I was going through treatment, and I know that helped me. So I know that integrity wise and personally that it's fine to charge and people are more accountable. It's more sort of how to sell to them that it will make a difference to their lives without it sounding like I'm taking advantage or using almost like a fear thing of, if you don't use my services, you'll never have a baby and you can't use it. It's more about building trust and relationships, but it doesn't mean that things like aspirational selling doesn't always work, because people find that it's not rubbing your face in it, but don't always like to hear positive stories because it's not them, it's not happened to them. It's still somebody else. So aspirational selling doesn't always work in this market because it can be upsetting for people. And then it's the selling by pointing out the things that the place they'll still be stuck in is quite difficult, because the place they're stuck in is so awful at that point. I don't want to be saying
I hear you. So I think you've got to think about two things here. One is ultimately, when you decided to hire a coach to help you, why? What made you make the decision?
Because I knew I couldn't go into another round of IVF believing it wouldn't work, and that I needed to change my mindset on that.
Okay, so that leads me into the next bit. When we're selling to people, we have to look at the outcomes that we're selling them. Now, when we're selling in sensitive or vulnerable markets, like IVF, you can't promise someone a baby. Equally, I can't promise someone they're going to make a ton of money when they work with me. In an ideal world, if they put the work in and if, they follow everything to the letter, then yeah, absolutely. If they don't, then they won't. IVF isn't so controlled. It literally is down to factors that you as a coach cannot always control. Yeah. And I think that when we're in these spaces, health and wellness particularly, we can't control what somebody's body does. We can only give them the best information for what's going to happen. I think one of the things that maybe makes you uncomfortable about selling in a vulnerable situation, you were talking about aspiration and, obviously the thing that they want, they can't have. When we look at your own buying procedure, you didn't buy because you thought having a coach would give you a baby. You bought because you didn't want to go into another round thinking it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
So when we're selling in your market, I would be looking at outcomes like that. Look, when you're marketing, when you're looking at your messaging, your marketing, your polarization and things like that, you need to be looking at the factors that you can control as a coach. And that really is, how are they going to feel during the process? How are they going to feel if it goes well? Because ultimately, having a baby, I've heard, is a big experience. And I've heard that, when it actually happens, even if you've really wanted one for ages, it doesn't always look and feel like you thought.
Yeah.
And that can be really difficult to cope with.
Yeah.
Equally, if it doesn't go well and it's your first shot or your last shot or whatever shot it is at IVF, having a coach there to support you can be really helpful because it's somebody who's objective and who can give you coping strategies. It's not somebody who, like a doctor, is just going to go, oh, well, cool, it didn't work. So choices are do another round or don't.
Yeah.
What you're selling is very different, I think, from what maybe you're seeing in the market, which is, and maybe it's funny because when you talk about aspirational selling, I was like, Sarah's listened to the podcast. She's read the book. Always good.
I went back through it last night with my highlights.
I love it. When you're looking at aspirational selling, and talk like my mum here for a minute, but aspirational is as aspirational does. For some people, money is really aspirational. So online, when we see social media influencers and stuff like that, and we see them in front of Lamborghinis or on holidays, and everyone's like, oh my God, they've got so much money, that's great. Equally, travel is aspirational. Some people really love to travel. I'm off skiing next week. I can't wait. Does it make me aspirational? No, because instead of spending my time taking photos, I will be spending my time, sliding down the slope on some part of my anatomy. It's not going to look glamorous. For some people, having a baby is aspirational. Also, though, for some people, being able to get through the process of having a baby without destroying their relationship, without driving themselves insane, without, losing out on life opportunities just because they're on the journey, is aspirational.
Yeah.
So it's more about looking at your ideal clients and saying, what is it that they actually want? Because yes, the ultimate outcome is going to be that they want a baby. Of course it is. But it's about the process and the journey they take and how, not easy, but how mentally stable do they want that journey to be?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Because it's not just about kind of coping with the result at the end. It's coping with actually going through the process and giving you the techniques, because yes, it'd be lovely to be able to guarantee a baby at the end, but what they need is that it's okay, they can get through it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, it's about teaching them resilience and determination and obstacle management and coping strategies and those kinds of things. And so actually that's what you're selling. And I think the discomfort comes when we start to think, oh, well, if aspirational is here's the ultimate outcome, here's the baby, and you're trying to sell that, that is going to be uncomfortable, because that you're not taking advantage of people. You're not selling them something they don't want. You're not selling them a possibility that isn't real for them, but it's not something you can control.
Yeah.
And that will make you feel uncomfortable. Whereas their mindset, their coping, their ability to cope during the process, the support that they get, all of that kind of thing, that you can control regardless of what happens, whether they end up pregnant or whether they don't. So I think it's more about your messaging and looking at, okay, what am I actually selling to them?
Yeah.
And also not being afraid to trigger people. Yes, some people are going to get upset when they see a baby in the street. Not everyone can stop their lives moving forward because one person isn't getting what they want.
Yeah.
And it sounds really harsh, but it's the reality. Business coaches didn't stop making money when I wasn't making money in my business. They didn't stop talking about it. Did it trigger me? Yeah, absolutely. Can I compare it to not being able to have a baby? Well, no, because the two are completely different. All I can say is that at the time, it caused me hours and hours of frustration, worry, upset, and actually had somebody asked me if that was really important to me at that time, I'd been like, yeah, it's really important. And I wish I didn't have to see it every day. However, they didn't stop their lives just because I wasn't getting what I wanted, and it's the same in health and wellness. If you are somebody who's on a weight loss journey, it doesn't mean that you can ask all people who are slimmer than you to stop going to the gym just because you want to kind of catch up or something. And so, yes, I understand that maybe they don't want to hear success stories. Maybe that day it's the kind of straw that breaks the camel's back. But ultimately, if they don't hear those things, we rid them of the one thing they actually need, which is hope.
Yeah.
And if you take hope away from people, that's when you're really doing them a disservice. Because what testimonials and case studies and breakthroughs and things do for people is that they show them that even in the darkest time, it's still possible.
Yeah. And it's hard to do that sensitively. And so they still got that hope without it being...
I think the thing that I would say to people, particularly in your market, and the way that I position it is, it can be really hard to celebrate when other people have something that you don't yet. The good thing, though, is that it's also a reminder that it's still possible.
Yeah.
And sometimes actually there are people who've been in worse situations, who've come through it and who have got the result that they want. So it means that it is possible for you. And I would encourage them to start celebrating it, because, when we celebrate other people's wins, even though we might have that jealous or envious streak that isn't nice and it doesn't feel good, it can also retrain people into thinking, oh, actually, it's really good. That person, they've struggled for a long time. I'm really pleased for them. And actually, if then their own journey doesn't work out in the way they expect, they don't feel like they compromise their values or the kind of person that they are by feeling like they were being mean to people all the time, and hating everyone because they had a baby.
Yeah. And there's definitely people who feel like that. You find a bit of a split down the middle of those that want the success stories and those that don't. And I do find that in the support group very much, that people will message me saying, I don't like seeing all the positives. And then others will say, can you tell us more, because it does give us hope. So it's, about, I think some of it is mindset there with me, but then focusing on the outcomes that I can control. And it feels less, not like I'm taking advantage, but it's selling them what they need.
Yeah.
As well.
And that's the thing, ultimately, you're never going to please everyone. I think this is the thing. And for you, I think this is probably the biggest mindset thing, is that wanting to make everyone happy. You can't, and it's really frustrating. And I have it. I have people, I get like 3 or 4 messages a week. I was saying to my boyfriend the other week, I get 3 or 4 messages a week from people who say, I really hate you. Your content's crap. You're fat. That's always a favorite, actually. I'm always like, thanks. I usually read them as I'm eating my takeaway. So I'm like, this is fine. But, you're never going to make everyone happy. And I think for you, it's about looking at the business that you want to build and the culture that you want to breed. Because ultimately, these places, these support groups can be a kind of terrifying space where actually, if it's really negative and there's never any success stories, it's literally just people rocking up and whining and moaning. And who wants to spend time with that? That's not productive either. That doesn't help. So yes, seeing success stories, it might be painful, but at least it proves there is another side.
Yeah, and that treatment can work. And yeah, I'm very conscious that I want the support groups to be places where people can kind of feel positive that they'll be okay, and that, wherever they are in treatment, advice like being kind to yourself and things like that, that will help them get through it. So it's not just all negative.
Exactly. It can't always be doom and gloom. And I think, you've got to take that stand in your community of actually, when these people say, I was really jealous, or I really was hurt, or I hate seeing the success stories, it's up to you to say, yeah, completely get that. I was where you were, 6 years ago, that was me, and I completely appreciate it. However, actually, if we don't share the success stories, we don't share what's possible. And then all that happens is you get stuck into the cycle of believing that it will never happen for you. And whilst it might not, it also might, but it's not going to happen if you continue going in and just spending tons of time being really negative about everybody else's joy.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is about being that blunt, because yes, it's hard. Yes, we sympathize. Unfortunately, though, it's not always about the problem that people are having. It's about the way they deal with it.
Yeah. And it's good to share those others, especially in the group, because when people post positive, they've been through the same thing.
Exactly.
That they're going through. So it's everybody who's in there has struggled. So it is positive to hear that it can happen. But yeah, it's just that makes sense about focusing on kind of the outcomes that we can control, about coping through the process, coping strategies, how I'd feel. Like I was saying, I didn't want to go into it believing it wouldn't work. And yeah, focus on what is the aspiration about being all right, being resilient, determined, getting through it.
Exactly. 100%. And when you're selling that, I don't think that'll feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's not that you're taking advantage then. It's that you're saying you're in this situation and I can provide a solution. I can help you manage this in the best way for you, for your own sanity, for your relationships, for your work, all of this kind of thing. That's what I can help you do. Can't give you a baby, but the things that I do will help.
Yeah. Because ultimately it's a baby that people want, and I know you've talked about sort of selling what they want and give them what they need. Yeah. And it's what they want is a baby, but what they need is coping mechanisms to get them through it. And
yeah, I think you've got to look at that though, and look at the fact that they also don't want this to be horrendous. Yes, they want a baby. Ultimate outcome is I want a baby, and that's fine, but they can accept that the baby takes work. What they don't seem to be able to accept is that actually it's a hard process, and that, it's kind of like launching in a way. I always say this to people when they're going through a launch, it's really hard. The last 7 days are really hard. And if people aren't buying as quickly as you want, you get really negative. And once you're negative, that's it. Nothing else happens. Nothing else is good enough. And you kind of get into this like vicious circle. That's kind of what your audience are doing without you. If you don't step in and say, okay, well, here's how you can do this. Here's how you can cope. Here's how you can change these things so that you can be more positive. All they're seeing all the time is the negative. Yeah. And that doesn't help them have a baby. You're putting your body under extra stress. You're making yourself miserable. You're ruining your relationships. That's not going to help you have a baby. And if you do end up having a baby, it could end up causing massive, massive problems.
Yeah.
And that's not what you want to bring a child into.
No. So it's kind of, reminding them of all of that. And that's what they need to work on to help. And that's where I can help them.
Yeah.
And I do feel a lot more comfortable talking about that than sort of, because I can't promise them a baby, but I can help them on the process.
Exactly. And that's it. Sometimes when we feel like we're uncomfortable selling something, it's because we're not sure of the message around it. I think for you, it's about understanding you don't have to sell a baby for people to buy from you.
Yeah.
Because the other stuff that you do, the value that you add, is so much more important than the end result. Because if people don't have that support and they get to the end result and it's not what they want, not everyone's going to be able to cope.
No.
Yeah?
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
Does that help?
It does. It does. And it's all stuff that I know. And it's just, being told that I need to like focus. I need to focus on that. And I think some of it is my mindset thinking, but they don't want that. But that's what I know I sell and what they need. So
the thing is, your market's going to be about education. And I think this is the thing. Sometimes, and I do it all the time, people come to me and they're always saying, Jess, I need more leads. And I'm like, okay, great. How many leads did you get last week? And if they say 5, and I say, well, how many did you convert? And they go, oh, none. Like, then you don't need more leads. You need conversion. It's the same in your audience. It's like, yeah, you want a baby. And yes, you're doing all the scientific things to help you do that. Unfortunately, your brain isn't going to catch up emotionally. Your brain and science are on 2 different tracks. Yeah. And it's about educating people to say, and showing them that actually, if they're not on the same line, you're not giving yourself the best chance. And that's not a mindset thing. Every industry has the same problem, is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't matter whether you're in an industry where you're selling to vulnerable people, what you deem to be vulnerable people, or whether you're selling in financial services or a really sharky industry. Everyone has the same issue. Their audience don't know how to fix the problem, because if they did, they'd be doing it.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be taking advice. They wouldn't be looking for support. The thing that we have to do is educate people on why it's important to look at other solutions, because some people bash their head against a brick wall and they're like, no, I'm just going to do another round of IVF, another round of IVF, another round of IVF. Well, nothing's changing. Yeah. And in between these rounds, all that's happening is they're arguing with their partner, they're getting really frustrated, they're not doing what they want at work, they're not living the life, da, 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 da. And yet the percentage for people who actually go away from IVF, who've been unsuccessful, and then go away and have their baby just when they're just relaxing and not expecting, and they've been told they can't have kids, is actually really high.
Yeah.
In comparison to the success rates of IVF. So, this is where you need to educate people and say, look, actually, the brain and your thoughts play a massive part in whether or not you're successful, and also in how you deal with the end result.
Yeah.
That's what we're working towards, is how you get through the journey and how you deal with whatever comes at the end.
Yeah. Yes,
does that feel a bit better?
Yeah, it does, because it's about giving them the coping strategies to cope with the result at the end as well, and then put them in a better place while going through it, which is I think would be beneficial to anybody who's going through treatment. I honestly believe that it's something that people should be offered or given that chance to work on.
100%. And that's what you've got to be saying. That's where you've got to educate your audience. Because right now they're so focused on the end result, they can't see anything else. They can't, and I mean, yes, typically they can be a vulnerable audience. People go, oh yeah, if you're going through IVF, you should eat this food. So automatically everyone goes out and buys, I don't know, avocados or something, or they take this supplement, or you have to go and buy this cushion, or whatever it is that they're trying to sell them. You're not doing that. You're saying, okay, here's the emotional support that you actually need, that you're probably not going to get from your doctor who's got 20 people just like you on the client list. You're not going to get it from the hospital. You're not going to get it from your family and friends, because they don't understand.
Yeah.
And it's not their job.
Yeah, they're there to support, but they don't fully understand how to help make a difference.
And that's where you want to take the educational line, and that's where your messaging, you want to shift that messaging and instead of thinking I'm selling to people who, you know, are already vulnerable, and actually, no, you're not. You're enhancing the experience that somebody who is making a choice is having.
Yeah.
And that is the thing. IVF is a choice. Having a baby is a choice. And how you go through the journey is a choice.
Yeah. How you deal with it. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, that has helped me feel a lot more comfortable about how I sell, educating first before selling to them as well.
Exactly. Always education first. You know, it makes it so much easier.
Yeah. And I think that education piece needs to go across the board as well, with people who work with people going through treatment as well, just on how deep the emotional issues are and the support levels they need going through that. So the same applies to that as well. And
I would definitely take that as an idea for a workshop and put that out into the corporate space, either in places of work where people who are undergoing IVF will be working and like how to deal with it there, or into, you know, the organisations that are providing the IVF in the first place, and making them aware that there should be a process to look after people who are vulnerable, you know, and who really are using things like their life savings for a shot, you know.
That's it. It's helping, making sure they know how to fully support them getting through that process while they're at their clinic, while they're at their place of work. It's, you know, they have a big impact on their life while they're there.
Massively. So
brilliant.
Is there anything else I can help with?
I think that's covered it. There's a lot to and think about, and sort of think about how I can do that. But it's made a lot more sense of how I need to be positioning myself.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to be about positioning, and it's going to be about taking back the reins in your group a little bit and resetting the boundaries that actually we do need to be celebrating everyone's wins. Everyone in here is going through the same thing. And actually, yes, it can be frustrating to see other people getting what they want when you're not. But ultimately, it's the biggest reminder that it can happen for you too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. So if people are struggling with IVF or their journey through IVF or anything to do with infertility, where can they find you? Where's the best place for them to get in contact with you?
So anybody who is struggling with infertility can go to my support group on Facebook. So Surviving Infertility is the support group there, or visit my website, which is www.sarahbanks.coach. And then any organisations and businesses that are interested in finding out more about how they can support employees or patients going through IVF can visit my website, or I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter as well.
Perfect.
So I'll provide the links.
Amazing. And we'll have all of the links in the show notes for you. So if you are somebody who is going through infertility at the moment, who is struggling on the journey, or if you are a business or organisation that actually wants to support people better who are going through the IVF process, please make sure that you reach out and that you contact Sarah. And obviously, if you've enjoyed this episode, firstly, yay, that's all we want. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the download button so that you don't miss any more episodes. And I will see you on Monday for another deep dive training.